A good work only becomes a good thing when it benefits people and advertises God. If God is not being advertised, it's a good thing, but it hasn't graduated to become a good work. He says, let men see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Because we don't just do good things. There are enough sinners out there for that. Our job is to do good works and advertise the Father. In biblical days, even today, you have communities on hills. They call them tells in Israel. These tells or hills are elevated areas. And on these elevated areas, you'll see whole towns. In biblical days, no electricity, you went from tell to tell, that is, hill to hill, by the lights. Because the people would have candles in their homes. And the candles in their homes in the night would give light to the traveler traveling from one place, one tell, to another tell, and the tells are elevated. Not under a bushel, not under a bed, but they were elevated, in other words, clearly visible so people could get clear direction from tell to tell, hill to hill. You are the light of the world. Your Christianity should be visible. It should be visible. Everybody else is coming out the closet, you might as well come out too. You are to be visible. If you were accused tomorrow of being a Christian at work, would there be enough evidence to convict you, or would you be found innocent of all charges? Because you're not a visible Christian. I'm not talking about churchgoer. I'm talking about a visible representative of Jesus Christ who unapologetically doesn't mind being identified with him. Now, I'm not talking about being bombastic, but I am talking about being clear. It should be clear that you have committed yourself to Jesus Christ, and you will not allow the wokeness of the world to hide the light of your faith. Light is visible. It reveals. It shows. You ever gotten up in the middle of the night to use the facilities? The older you get, the more you have to get up in the middle of the night. And you got up, but you decided not to turn on the light, but didn't negotiate the end of the bed correctly. And I'm talking about hit your pinky toe. Hit your pinky, not your big toe. I'm talking about your pinky toe. Woke the neighborhood up. I mean, you hit your pinky toe. Ah! You know, the problem was you wanted to negotiate without the light. We're living in a world that wants to negotiate without the light. But you are, guess what? The light. So your job and my job is to present in the society, the culture, not the church. This is convenient in here. But when we leave the building as kingdom servants, we are to make it known by walk and talk that we are representatives of another king and another kingdom. So that when you get your degree, when you get your expertise, whatever that happens to be, you are in that environment a representative. A doctor is not just a doctor. He's God's representative in the medical field, so the medical field sees what God looks like when God helps hurting people. A lawyer is not just a lawyer. They're God's representative in the bar association, so the bar association sees what God looks like when God tries a case. A business person is not just a business person. They're God's representative in business, so the business world gets to see what God looks like when God cuts a deal. A teacher is not just a teacher. They're God's representative in education, so education sees what God looks like when God teaches a lesson. A secretary is not just a secretary, she's God's representative in the office, so the office sees what God looks like when God handles correspondence. Over and over and over again, you represent another king and another kingdom. And that's supposed to be how we roll. Now, we fall short. But he says, this is what I want you to be. out there, because it's real safe in here. Nice in here. Nobody's railing against you in here. Nobody's going to cuss you out in here. Nobody's going to say you're a fanatic in here. They're not going to do that in here. But he says, I don't want you to serve me just in here. I want you to represent me out there. I want you to be my kingdom representative, my kingdom servant in the culture. And you are to reflect my light. Look, listen to what he says in Philippians chapter 2. He says, verse 15, so that you will prove yourselves to be blameless and innocent, children of God, above reproach, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you appear as lights in the world, holding fast the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I will have reason to glory, because I did not run in vain nor toil in vain. How do you become a children of light? How do you show forth the fact of your commitment? He says, by holding forth the word of life, meaning you're giving a biblical perspective. You're going to react from God's point of view. You're not going to start with the black point of view. You're not going to start with the white point of view. You're not going to start with the Democrat point of view. You're not going to start with the Republican point of view. You're not going to start with the rich point of view. You're not going to start with the poor point of view. You're not going to start with the male point of view. You're not going to start with the female point of view. What does God say on the subject? That's where I start. That makes you light. If you're not starting there, if what you think, how you feel, how you were raised, what your people say, what's on television, what's on radio is allowed to overrule God's word, you are a dark saint. He says you are light when you hold forth the word of life. When God's perspective rules all subjects. And he says the ministry is wasted when it's not. That's what he says in Philippians 2. He says that I have not run in vain. In other words, our church has failed if we're not producing salt and light Christians. I don't care what the preaching is, what the singing is, doesn't matter what the programs are and what the facilities look like. If we are not producing salty saints and lit Christians, then the ministry has failed. People who represent the king and his kingdom in the culture. Not just in the church house. Because they represent themselves as kingdom disciples who function as kingdom servants because they want to make a kingdom impact. They want it not to be hidden that I am a follower of Jesus Christ. People today aren't hiding their shame. They're putting it on public display. There used to be a time where if it was shameful, it was at least hidden. Now it's shameful and advertised. So why should you be apologizing that you are a visible, verbal, full-time follower of Jesus Christ? In verse 13, he says, and 16, he says, let your light so shine before men in such a way, meaning like this, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Not just hear your good words, see your good works. So let me help us all here by defining a good work, because it's different than a good thing. Sinners can do good things. You can be a pagan and be a nice person. Sinners can build hospitals. Non-Christians, atheists can build orphanages. Atheists can be philanthropists. You don't have to believe in God to be nice. Okay? A lot of good things are done by people who have no regard for God, but they do good things. That's a good thing, and that's fine. But we are not called to do good things. We're called to do good works. That's more than a good thing. Let men see your good works, watch this, and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Until God is attached to it, it's not a good work. It's a good thing. A good work only becomes a good thing when it benefits people and advertises God. If God is not being advertised, it's a good thing, but it hasn't graduated to become a good work. He says, let men see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. That's why in our bookstore we have these acts of kindness cards. And the acts of kindness cards, we ask our members to once a week find somebody to do an act of kindness for, cook a meal, encourage them, help a homeless person, something, but do an act of kindness. But when you do that thing, that good thing, you now offer to pray for them, because now you're bringing God into the good thing. You didn't just do a good thing. You said, can I pray for you? And most people accept that. And then you look for an opportunity, if possible, to share the gospel so that now they not only have a good thing on earth, a good work on earth, but now they have the opportunity to receive Christ in heaven. In fact, through the Urban Alternative, we're making this a national campaign, a kindness campaign. And then on those, if people who don't share the gospel, there'll be a gospel code on there where they can have a QR code to hear the gospel. Because we don't just do good things. There are enough sinners out there for that. Our job is to do good works and advertise the Father and his risen Son, Jesus Christ. He says, let men see your good works. Let it be visible that you're representatives of me. When you understand who God is, then you don't mind giving him glory. Some years ago, President Bush came here for the dedication of our education center across the street. And then he came here. And when we finally got the call that the President of the United States was coming to Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, all systems began to move. In other words, the normal wasn't normal no more. All systems began to move. There was impeccable concern and process of how things looked and how things were arranged, and they had these requirements that they had to have for the protection of the president and all this stuff. We had to go through conniptions because the President of the United States was coming here for a few minutes. Now, if we're willing to go through all that trouble, for somebody here 4 years, gone the next 4 years, back and forth, we go through all that trouble because of his name and because of his position. Don't tell me we can't let it be known that we are willing to go through a little trouble and a little inconvenience for the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Let men see your good works. Let men see your good works and let your light shine. Be visible. We're in this political season. Some people voting for this person. Some people voting for that person. They got cards in the yard. They got cards on their car, placards on their cars. I'm for this person. I'm for that person. In other words, they're going public for their candidate. One of them is going to lose. Jesus does not lose. So you ought to be willing to advertise. You ought to be willing to say, I don't just believe in God, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. You should be willing to appropriately advertise that. Let men see your good works and glorify your Father, and the greatest glory you can give to your Father is the exaltation of Jesus Christ.